Guys, welcome to Knowledge Pond YouTube channel. In this video, I would like to share .NET Framework interview questions and answers. So let me start with first question. So what are the different flavors of .NET? So we have .NET Framework, .NET Core, Mono .NET, XAMARIN. So what is the .NET Standard? The .NET Standard is a set of specifications that are intended to be available on all .NET implementation. The motivation behind the .NET Standard is establishing greater uniformity in the .NET ecosystem. The .NET Standard describes what a specific implementation like .NET Core, Mono, XAMARIN or .NET Framework has to implement. The advantages of .NET Standard: it defines the uniformity in all .NET implementation. It uses for developers to produce portable libraries that are usable across .NET implementations. It eliminates conditional compilation every time on shared sources libraries. So the pictorial representation of .NET Standard on .NET on top of .NET Standard, how the .NET Framework or .NET Core and XAMARIN sits. So what is the .NET Core? .NET Core is lightweight, linear, faster and improved version of .NET. It is a cross-platform version of .NET that allow us to create applications that supports and run on multiple platforms like Windows, Mac OS and Linux. So what is the Mono .NET? Mono is a software platform designed to allow developers to easily create cross-platform applications. It is an open source implementation of Microsoft's .NET framework based on the ECMA standard for C# and the CLR Common Language Runtime. So what is the XAMARIN? XAMARIN is a framework to develop a cross-platform mobile application that works on 3 mobile platforms like Android, iOS and Windows, and it gives same look and feel as native. What is the .NET Framework? The .NET Framework is designed and developed by Microsoft and runs on Microsoft Windows. It is a development platform that supports building and running software applications for Windows, Windows Server, Windows Phone, Microsoft Azure. It consists of base class library and common language runtime. Advantages of .NET Framework: BCL and CLR. It consists of base class library and common language runtime. Multiple language support. It supports for multiple languages, multiple applications. We can design and develop different kind of applications like desktop, web application and mobile applications. The development becomes easy. .NET consists of reusable code and many reusable components so that all common functionalities are available as ready-made, so the development becomes very easy. So common type system. Basic types are defined and are common to all languages. Common language interoperability. With this feature, functions written in one language are accessible to other languages, and then programmers can focus on creating applications in our preferred languages. So the next advantage is version compatibility. Applications are developed in particular version of .NET run without modification in later versions. The next advantage is side-by-side execution. It resolves the version conflicts by allowing multiple versions of common language runtime on same computer, and also supports multi-platforms. .NET allows us to develop applications for multi-platforms. The development frameworks. It supports a number of frameworks for developing different kind of applications as ASP.NET for web application, ADO.NET and Entity Framework for ORM data access, WCF for service-oriented application, and WPF for Windows desktop application. And deployment in .NET Framework makes the deployment very easy. So .NET Framework layers. If you see this picture, the bottom there is a common language runtime. Then the second layer is framework class library. Then third layer consists of different frameworks and supported application types. So as I mentioned earlier, it supports three layers, it has three layers: common language runtime, base class library, applications, or different frameworks. In first layer, common language runtime. So what exactly the common language runtime? So .NET Framework provides a runtime environment called common language runtime, which runs the code and provides the services that makes the development process very easy. CLR provides services like code management, it loading and executing the programs. The memory management with the help of garbage collection, it allocates, deallocate the memory. Security management like adding the security to the code, enforcement of code access security, the verification of type safety, interoperability with other system, compilation of MSIL code into native code, managing the exceptions and errors, exception handling, including cross-language exceptions, interoperation between the managed code and unmanaged code, support for developers like for services like profiling and debugging, and so on. So what is the common language runtime execution process? If you develop any application targeting .NET Framework, first it compiles our source code into MSIL code with the help of language compiler. Once the MSIL code is generated, CLR will take that MSIL code and compiles the operating system native code with the help of JITs. So what is the CTS? The common type system is a rich type system that supports the types and operations common in most programming languages. .NET supports 5 common type systems: classes, structures, interfaces, delegates, enumerations. So what is the CLS? So CLS means Common Language Specification is a set of specifications or rules. All .NET supported languages has to follow these rules to be part of the .NET framework. It is a subset of common type systems. So what is the MSIL? The MSIL stands for Microsoft Intermediate Language. When we compile our .NET program, the source code converts into MSIL code and it is a CPU independent instruction set. So what is a JIT? Just-in-time compiler will compile the MSIL code into native executable code, either EXE or DLL, for the specific mission and operating system. So what are the types, different types of JITs? We have pre-JIT, ECNO-JIT, normal JIT. In case of pre-JIT, it compiles the complete source code into native code in a single compilation cycle. This is done at the time of deployment of the application. In case of ECNO-JIT, it compiles only those functions that are called at runtime. However, these compiled functions are removed when they are not required. In case of normal JIT, it compiles only those functions that are called at runtime and they are stored in cache. If the same function is called next time, the CLR uses the same copy of compiled code without recompiling. So what is the difference between the managed code and unmanaged code? The managed code is executed directly by the CLR and it provides all the CLR services. The language compiler compiles the source code into MSIL code. This MSIL code is converted into operating system code with the help of CLR. So unmanaged code is executed directly by the operating system outside the CLR environment. It is directly compiled to native machine code, which depends on the machine configuration. The second layer in .NET Framework is the base class library. So what is the base class library? The base class library is a set of classes, interfaces, value types that provides access to the system functionality and which is the common and core for developing any kind of application. It is a set of reusable, ready-made solutions or ready-made functionality which is required to develop any kind of application, either it is Windows application, web application, mobile application, even network supported, or even data access related things. So the third layer in the .NET framework is application layer or a framework layer. So .NET supports different kind of applications like desktop applications, Windows services, web applications, service-oriented applications with the help of WCF and Web API, mobile applications, IoT applications, cloud-ready applications. So .NET supports like .NET framework has different internal small frameworks for developing different kind of applications. The ASP.NET for developing web applications, entity framework for data access related functionality, and WCF for service oriented applications, WPF for Windows applications, ML.NET for artificial intelligence. Supported languages. .NET supports and more than 100 languages like C#, VB.NET, F#, and VC++, and etc. So how .NET Framework manages the memory management? So memory types in .NET are two. One is the stack memory, second is the heap memory. In case of stack memory, the stack is responsible of keeping track of running memory needed in our application. It automatically deallocates the memory by the operating system. In case of heap, the heap is used to keep track of all the reference type information. When we create a new instance using the new keyword, it will be stored in the heap. It did not deallocate the heap memory. This memory will be later deallocated by the garbage collector. So what is the difference between the value type and reference type? Value types are stored in the stack memory, and .NET supported value types are double, float, integer, and decimal, bool, and enumeration types. Reference types as a pointer which points to the memory location and is stored in the heap. The reference types are strings and objects and so on. So what is the difference between the boxing and unboxing? The boxing, the process of converting value type to reference type. Unboxing, process of converting reference type to value type. So what is the garbage collector? The garbage collector is a mechanism automatically releases the memory used by the object when the object can no longer be accessed or used by any object. So how many types of generations are there in the garbage collector? We have three generations: generation 0, generation 1, and generation 2. So when we call generation 0, the first time initialized objects are stored in the generation 0, and in case of generation 1, when the objects are ready for garbage collection, those objects will be moved to generation 1 from generation 0. And in case of generation 2, when new object is created, if there is no memory in the generation 0, then generation 0 objects will be moved to generation 1 and generation 1 objects will be moved to generation 2. So what exactly the assembly? So an assembly is a primary building block of .NET Framework application. It is a collection of functionality that is built, versioned, and deployed as a single implementation unit. Assemblies are self-describing by means of their manifest, which is integral part of the every assembly. So what are the components in assembly? An assembly is a logical unit that is made of four different types of components: manifest, metadata, MSIL, source code, and resources. So what is a manifest? Manifest consists of assembly identity, version, culture, and digital signature. This information is used at runtime to resolve references, enforce the version binding policy, and validate the integrity of loaded assemblies. The runtime can determine and locate the assembly for any running object, since every object, like every type, is loaded in the context of assembly. So what is the metadata? Metadata describe the contents in assembly. It includes the description of an assembly and modules, classes, interfaces, methods, properties, fields, events, global methods, and so forth. What is ILDASM? Intermediate Language Disassembler. It is a tool to view and read the assembly content in manifest view. This tool is supported along with the Visual Studio.NET. It is also available along with the .NET SDK. To access this tool, we have to run the ILDASM exe. So what is the private assembly and shared assembly? Private assembly is used only by the single application and is stored in application install directory. A shared assembly is one that can be referenced by more than one application. So what is the satellite assembly? Satellite assemblies are assemblies that are used to deploy language and culture specific resources for an application. In an application, a separate product IC ID is assigned to each language, and a satellite assembly is installed in a language specific subdirectory. Is versioning applicable to the private assemblies? No, the versioning is not applicable to private assembly, as these assemblies reside in their individual folder. Versioning can be applied to shared assemblies. What is the difference between a namespace and assembly? A namespace is the logical naming for the types. The concept of namespace is not related to that of an assembly. The namespace is a logical design time naming convenience, and whereas an assembly establishes the name scope for the types at runtime. So what is the global assembly cache, or GAC? The GAC stores like shared assemblies which are common for several applications on the computer. Assemblies deployed in the GAC must have a strong name. Global assembly cache tool is used to add shared assembly to the GAC. So what is the strong name? A strong name is the .NET assembly name combined with its versioning number and other information to uniquely identify the assembly. This allows like multiple versions of the same assembly to peacefully coexist in the global assembly cache, where the shared assemblies are typically stored. It consists of 5 parts: simple name, public key, version, culture, processor architecture. So what are the steps to create a strong name and how to add into the GAC? So we need to open the command prompt and type the sync and sn-k and sync name, and this will create a test snk file to that folder. Then open the assembly info.cs file, add this path into that assembly key file path, then build the application, then create a strong name to the DLL, install the assembly to the GAC by using the GAC utility tool. So what is the app domain? An app domain is a virtual process that serves to isolate an application. All objects created within the same application are created within the same application domain. Multiple application domains can exist in a single operating system process, making them a lightweight means by application isolation. So what is the difference between the app domain or operating system process? An operating system process provides isolating by having a distinct memory address space. While in case this is an effective It is also expensive and it does not scale to the number of numbers required for the large web servers. In case of common language runtime, enforce the application isolation by managing the memory use of code running within the application domain. This ensures it does not access the memory outside the boundaries of application domain. So what is the DLL hell? DLL hell arises when working with DLLs like dynamic link libraries used with Microsoft Windows operating system, particularly legacy 16-bit editions, which all run in a single memory space. The problem occurs by registering the DLLs with the same name. So the .NET overcomes this problem by supporting the multiple versions of the assembly. Now, what are the essential tools? So Visual Studio is required for development and ReSharper for code productivity, .NET Reflector and FX Corp, Style Corp and Fiddler and so on. So what are the suggested books? So I suggest you like CLR via C# and is from Microsoft. There is a .NET IL Assembler from Microsoft and a Common Language Runtime. It is also from Microsoft. This give complete in-depth deep dive into of .NET framework. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you would get latest updates automatically. And thank you very much.